So, the Battlefront January patch is now live, and Lando's Power Blast glitch has finally been fixed, bringing him back in line with the other heroes and ending his ridiculous reign of terror across the multiplayer community. Not to mention literally a ton of other fixes, changes, nerfs, and buffs that came bundled with the patch, like Walker Assault balancing, TIE Striker changes, and much more. So today I'm going to break down the 10 biggest game-changing features in the January patch, ranging from fixes to nerfs and buffs that will change the way you play Battlefront. My name is Connor, and welcome to Star Wars Central. So the Battlefront patch has released, and mostly I think it's pretty good. I haven't found any major issues with it so far. And the biggest problems like Lando's Power Blast glitch have also been fixed by DICE, so it's a very good patch overall. So let's get started with the 10 biggest changes in the patch. Coming in at number 10, we have a major Boba Fett change that will make him a really effective counter for Chewbacca. In the January patch, DICE have increased the flamethrower damage against Chewbacca and only Chewbacca by 50%. Now normally the flamethrower is pretty underpowered and very situational, but with the January patch, DICE are turning Boba into a Chewbacca counter, which should be very helpful considering just how much health he has and how difficult it can be to take him down. Next up at number 9, we have a big change for Walker Assault. DICE have adjusted the ATA health across all maps and adjusted the ATA speed on Twilight on Hoth. This should mean that Walker Assault games are much more balanced than they used to be. Only time is going to tell if they've solved the balance issues entirely, but I'm kind of optimistic about this. Moving on to number 8, we have a pretty big Bosk nerf that should mean his micro-grenades are far less powerful than they used to be. Now, to clarify, I don't think DICE go far enough with this change. The real solution would be to reduce the number of micro-grenades he has, not just slightly reduce their overall effectiveness. All this change is going to do is make sure that Bosk spends perhaps an extra second firing a few more micro-grenades near a spawn room. It is not going to stop him from sustaining his health. Now, I've said what I think, so let's take a look at the change. The micro-grenade's inner radius has been reduced from 3 to 2.5 meters, so you'll have to get slightly closer to take full damage from one, and the micro-grenade's radius has been reduced from 5 to 4 meters. So in general, it's going to be easier to avoid micro-grenades, but this still does nothing to stop Bosk from spamming them around spawn rooms and choke points. Anyway, at number 7, we've got a buff for the TIE Striker. If we're being honest, it really is one of the worst pickups you can get. To clarify, I think it's a great idea and I love getting it because it's so different and unique. But even I knew it was really underpowered. Now, DICE have solved this with a pretty big buff in the January patch. The projectile speed has been raised from 800 to 1000 meters per second, and the explosive damage has been massively increased from 5 to 10. So not only have they doubled the damage from the TIE Striker, but they've also increased the speed at which projectiles reach you, which is going to make it harder to avoid being hit. Overall, this change is going to be very good for the TIE Striker. It's not going to make it overpowered, but it's not going to be underpowered anymore either. So in a way, it should be balanced. Anyway, moving on to number 6, we have Lando. Lando only got 2 changes in this patch, but they are pretty big changes. Firstly, the Power Blast glitch is over. DICE have implemented a fix that should mean Power Blast now goes on cooldown properly after deactivation. And secondly, they've given him a bit of a buff in that his Power Blast explosion no longer causes damage to himself. Next up, number 5, Leia is being buffed. When Bacta came to Battlefront, people noticed that they could barely survive, but still survive Leia's one-shot ability called Trooper's Bane. And yeah, as you've guessed, that is now gone. Now Trooper's Bane will one-shot stormtroopers even if they are affected by Bacta. The stun animation bug has been fixed, and the trait radius has also been buffed, being increased from 8 to 13 meters. In general, Leia is going to be a much more viable hero and should be more fun to play. Moving on, at number 4, the Infiltration game mode has finally been fixed. You may have noticed that the first round of the mode, called the Approach, went by very quickly. Whilst this is partly intended so players don't get bored, most of the time it's because U-Wing pilots would abuse a glitch in the map that allowed them to effectively fly out of bounds and reach the shield gates without any TIE fighters being able to stop them. This was really annoying, and it did get very boring to see the first round of the mode over in like under a minute each time. So thank you DICE for fixing this. I'm not expecting too big a change, but it should mean the first round won't be won through a glitch, and it will instead be won through teamwork and a good pilot, as it should be. Moving on to number 3, the very useless Sonic Imploder is going to become very useful. The blast radius has been increased from 2 to 4 meters, doubling the range at which it will deal damage to enemy players, and the damage has been increased a little bit from 90 to 100. So not much of a damage increase, but more of the damage should be applying to the enemy, so it will be better overall. Next up at number 2, Krennic has been nerfed and buffed at the same time. His armor breaker ability has reduced homing, which basically means it won't be locking onto enemy players anymore. This will make it slightly harder to land your shots, and the armor breaker won't be crazy like it used to be. DICE have also buffed him slightly by increasing his trait radius from 10 to 12 meters, but that's a pretty small change overall. And finally, at number 1, the biggest change in this patch is the Darth Vader buff. Now, Darth Vader is already pretty powerful, but this change is going to make him insane. Darth Vader can now use his saber throw and heavy strike when force choking. So he's no longer going to be a sitting target when he chokes someone, he can be just as mobile and just as deadly. Especially in close quarters combat where people can't get away from that incredibly powerful heavy strike. Now that is the end of my pick for the 10 biggest changes in this patch. Obviously there are some other changes out there, but not really anything bigger than what I mentioned in the video. If you want to check the patch notes for yourself, there is a link in the description down below. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Remember to tell me in the comments below, what do you want to see in the next Battlefront patch, and how happy are you that they finally fixed the Lando Power Blast glitch? Thank you guys so much for your support, I'll see you next time, and may the Force be with you.